So,
We could go ahead and get started, Carl.
excellent. I saw that. There you go. So, welcome to the Ty Houston webinar on finding product market fit. I'm really excited to be the moderator today. Today we've got Eric Espinosa, and this webinar is brought to you by Ty Houston. Ty is the Indus Entrepreneurs. The Houston chapter is the one putting on this event. The Indus Entrepreneurs was founded in 1992 in Silicon Valley by a group of successful entrepreneurs, corporate executives, and senior professionals. Currently, there's about 15,000 members, over 3,000 charter members or mentors, and these are in 61 chapters across 14 countries. Ty's mission is to foster entrepreneurship globally through mentoring, networking, investing, and education. And we're very grateful to our sponsors, which you see on the screen, for supporting our efforts and this webinar today as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce Eric Espinosa with Venture Validators. So Eric has been able to pull together this fantastic webinar based on his experience as the founder of Venture Validator. He's also an entrepreneurship professor at BYU. He's validated over 70 startups and taught his framework on the stages of validation from Techstars to the Lean Startup Conference. So he's got a lot of experience with this. So Eric, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me here. Okay, can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Perfect. So as Carl said, I'm the CEO of Venture Validator, but it's not where I've always been. I used to be just like the rest of you, starting out with an idea and a startup that failed, and then trying another idea and a startup that failed, and trying that again and again until I finally got something that that was working. 1 second, I'm trying to get my presentation isn't wanting to start. Okay. All right. So I started my entrepreneurial journey actually as an undergrad at BYU. And I had a bunch of business ideas, and I was very, very interested in Lean Startup and the fact that you can go ahead and test startup ideas without having to spend all the money to go ahead and fail with a lot of investor money or a lot of your personal capital. And with that, I learned the processes really quickly, to the point where I went through, I think, 15 business ideas at school. One of them I ended up winning $25,000 for. It was called Fresh Stamp. It was an expiration date barcode add-on that allowed grocery stores to scan inventory in by batches and scan out by batches. And what I was able to do, because I followed Lean Startup principles and followed them correctly, is I took that business from idea to within 40 days, winning $25,000, getting $650,000 of investment offer, but not drinking my own Kool-Aid, because a lot of founders, they'll use competitions, or they'll use getting money from VCs as a way to say that I'm validated. Look, these other people believe in me. There's proof that I've got a good startup idea. But the reality is that that's all hype. And it's what your customers think at the end of the day. And so I ignored all investment offers and said, nope, I got to put my blinders on. I still have other things I need to go validate. And actually 40 days later, just networking with a lot of my customers, I found different areas that invalidated my business, and I was able to pull the plug. What this meant is I had $20,000 left, though, of prize money and no business to spend it on. And so what I ended up doing is saying, I've got a bunch of ideas. I want to spend my time and resources on not just a mediocre idea, but on the best idea. And so I took a lot of the processes that are taught in Lean Startup that were taught at BYU, which is a nationally ranked entrepreneurship program. And in the process, I became really good at innovating on our current frameworks for testing product market fit early on. So good that I actually started a consulting firm on the side just to help other entrepreneurs as they're going through it, because a lot of entrepreneurs skip this stage. They skip the interviews, the surveys, the focus groups. There's a variety of reasons. One, because it's really hard to do it right. Two, because they don't know how to do it. And three, it's kind of gotten a bad reputation as something that's not very reliable. And so as I had this consulting business on the side, it started becoming a full-time thing for me because more founders were coming to me than I had time for. And I was a little bit upset because I said, you know, consulting's not scalable. I don't want to get myself stuck into consulting. And so I did what you naturally do, is I tried to cut demand and I doubled my prices. But people still kept coming to me and I was doing no marketing. And so I was really frustrated. I said, I'm not going to get stuck in this non-scalable business. So I doubled my prices again and people still kept coming. And so at this point I said, okay, is there a way that we can make this scalable? And so that's kind of the birth of Venture Validator. Since then, as Carl mentioned, I've also become an adjunct professor at BYU, teaching entrepreneurial market research. And then I've presented it on a number of stages, these frameworks. So what we focus on at Venture Validator is validation for product market fit when there is a market desirability risk. We've helped over 75 startups in this process, people from idea on a napkin all the way up to, we have MVP. We even have some traction, but we don't have enough traction. And whenever you don't have revenue, dollars from your customers proving that they want your product, that they're going to refer your product to other people, and they're going to repeat their purchases, you don't have product market fit validated. So that's kind of our sweet spot and what we do. And then just kind of as a bonus gift for anybody that's on this webinar right now, I'm going to go ahead and drop a link so that you can have free access to our course in which we teach entrepreneurs how to find product market fit. So with that, I'll jump right into the educational aspect. So if you look at the reasons why startups fail, the number one reason is because startups don't have enough market need. So 42%, that's almost half of startups fail because not enough people want your product badly enough. I don't think that founders let that sink in enough, because nobody's going to start a product unless they believe completely that this is going to be successful. But you have to realize that as founders, we're an odd bunch of people. I mean, the fact that you're willing to quit a corporate job, to invest all of your money in it, to go invest family money into it, to go work 80 hours a week, and you're often putting money into the business to go pay payroll for other people, you're kind of an odd duck. And because of that, you shouldn't be building a product for yourself, because there's not a lot of people who are just like you. And that's the only way you can really explain that, 42% of founders are launching ideas that are just bound to fail. Well, my idea was, can we find this out quicker? Can we find this out sooner? And then can we iterate and build something much quicker so that we can get something that is right? A lot of these founders, they don't have bad ideas. It's just mediocre ideas. And that's the worst type of failure, because that's the type of idea that sucks you in and you have just enough promise to keep going and just enough potential that you keep pouring in resources, and you're never going to get there, yet you keep dumping everything you have into it. So my thought was, how can we do this? And I'm sure everyone who has any type of founder experience is going to say, well, an MVP, a minimum viable product. Can we go build up the minimum feature set and go test it? And yeah, that's great. But if you look at the stats, it takes 4.5 months to build a software MVP. That's the average. And the average cost of failure is $27,000. That's not cheap enough. That's not quick enough for us to go find out, is this something the market actually wants? We can do that much earlier and much quicker. And so that's been the whole goal of Venture Validator. And the vision of what we've been doing is trying to gauge the market desirability before something's actually been built. And if it's already been built, how can we tweak those things so that they meet the expectations of what the customer would actually pay for? So with that, product market fit is the most important thing you can focus on as an early stage startup. And there's three pieces that make up product market fit. There's the right features for your product. So making sure that you don't have pie in the sky. A lot of entrepreneurs, I'll sit down with them and they'll try to tell me about their idea. And a half hour in, I still don't completely understand their idea because they have all these features that they're trying to throw out there. And it makes sense though, because founders are visionaries and we see the future. We see Facebook 2021 with marketplace, with apps, with games, with groups, all these features of Facebook 2021, but we have to go back to Facebook 2004. What are the key value propositions that no other solution can deliver right now? And can we do that well enough that we actually have the budget to go deliver this? And then we now have the clarity in our marketing message that it sticks and we can actually acquire customers for the minimal budget that we do have. So that's the first thing is focusing on the right product features. The second thing is going to be focusing on the right target market. Now, so many entrepreneurs are used to pitching and they pitch their way to success that they won't ever admit to you until you've had 2 or 3 meetings with them. And this will happen from idea on a napkin to founders who have raised a couple $1 million. And they'll admit that they actually don't know who their target customer is. And that's okay, because the reality is you're not going to know who your ideal target customer is until you've had 100 to 200 customers, until you've had the practice to see, okay, this is not a customer, this is a customer. They bought my product, but they weren't very satisfied. The product wasn't wrong. They just didn't have the right needs for it. Until you've seen that dozens and dozens of times, you can't know who your target market is unless you go about and you test things the right way. So what we're trying to focus on is, can we narrow it down instead of saying, yeah, there's this whole wide array of possible target market customers, but saying, okay, well, here's where the early adopters are. This is where we can get a foothold in the market and then start expanding over time. That's what we want to find out day one. And then the third part of product market fit is making sure that you're selling the right product features to the right target market at the right price. And the right price or making sure that you have a profitable market does go a little bit hand in hand with your target market as far as the market size, and making sure that you have a market that's big enough to warrant you spending your full time into it, and if needed, investors' money into that startup. So there are 2 ways that you can actually predict product market fit. And the first one is the wow factor test. And the second one is something called the Sean Ellis test. So the wow factor test is a predictive product market fit test. This is something that is performed before a product has been tried by potential customers. The Sean Ellis test is an actual product market fit test. And you use that test after somebody has actually used the value props of your widget, of your startup, of your MVP. So you have these 2 tests and they go hand in hand, where on the one hand, you're trying to test, is this something that people actually want? And then now you say, yeah, I've made my tweaks, I've built it. Now you're testing with the Sean Ellis test to make sure that you're delivering on what you actually promised that you would give them. So with this, there's a number of ways that we can test the wow factor test. You can test with the Sean Ellis test for product market fit. Now, Venture Validator focuses on surveys. We teach people how to do interviews. We teach people how to do focus groups. We even teach people how to do surveys, but we focus on surveys. And the reason why is because you can get a very large volume and quantity of information. With that, there are a lot of drawbacks to surveys. And you have to be very, very careful that you have good survey design. So I'm going to go through the next 5 minutes and just jump through and explain a couple of the good elements of a survey that's actually going to produce reliable results. So the first piece is making sure that you have good survey design. So you need to make sure you're asking the right questions in the right order and that your survey length is digestible. So typically you're not going to want a survey to take more than about 2 minutes if you are doing a speed through, and most people should be taking the survey in about 5 to 7 minutes when they're taking their time and walking through it. With that, just be aware that the order in which you ask questions can very much influence how people answer. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people making is that they lead customers along a certain chain of logic, where they get you to ask or answer yes too many times in a row, and it will go from, I actually mentioned this one. So I was judging a team from Jamaica. It was the International Business Model Competition, and this is a top 30 team out of 6,000. So to get there, you have to have done a lot of work to get into this competition. And this team from Jamaica had this vaginal cream for yeast infections that was all natural. And the competitor products that they were trying to pitch against had borax in it. And the question that they had used to prove that they had a great product is they said, they were asking people, do you think that it would be good to have borax in a vaginal cream? Yes or no? And then they're asking a question saying, would you, I think it was, do you think that you would rather prefer to have our product that does not have borax or a competitor product that has borax in the vaginal cream? And 93% of people said that they would rather have no borax. But does that really validate that people are going to buy your product? No, that's you're asking them when you're pointing it out so point blank. Who in their right mind would say no? Give me some pesticide. So it's really important that you have a good survey design and having it in a way that's not going to bias people. The second really key part of a survey is the product description. So when you're explaining your idea to people, as the founder, you usually have Facebook 2021 in your mind, but you need to break it down to MVP. And what are those key value props? And so a tried and tested way, and you can do this from explaining a blockchain idea to a consumer app to outdoor gear, anything can really be explained in this framework where you're saying, first off, this is the customer. Tell people, this is who I think my ideal customer is. Then tell them, this is what the problem is. And here's how the existing solutions are not solving that problem. Then you say a solution statement, a one phrase, this is what my product is and what it does. And then you jump into the details, explaining how it works and how a customer would use it. And then in section 5, you're going to go over the benefit summary. Now, the benefit summary is the inverse of what section 3 is, of the existing solutions and how they're inadequate. And it makes sense because your MVP is delivering some type of value that no other solution can deliver. And so that's what you focus on in that benefit summary. And then you explain what the price is. So following this format is really important because if a customer has, well, if you have any type of information that's lacking in that, and if there's any gap in understanding, one customer will insert their own assumption for what that gap is. But every other customer starts putting in their own assumptions. And if they're looking at this idea from a different angle, well, they're really looking at two different ideas. And if that's the case, then the scoring that you're getting, all the data that you're getting is highly inaccurate. And that's one of the biggest reasons right there. Survey design, people are having bad, misleading surveys, and then they don't explain their product well enough, is why they're getting bad data. The third part is going to be target market and making sure that you have an unbiased group and that they meet the screening criteria to be in your target market. So what unbiased means is, no, you can't use your Facebook friends and have them go ahead and take your survey. A lot of founders do that. They post on their Facebook because they're scared. They're scared to get feedback. They don't want their idea being stolen, or they don't want their baby being called ugly. For the first one, your idea being stolen, that's a fear that I have yet to see. Out of the hundreds of ideas and hundreds of entrepreneurs that I work with, I've actually yet to see an entrepreneur whose idea has been stolen. It can happen. It is more likely to happen if you're showing it to your competitors, especially big corporations. But in general, you have a much, much, much higher risk, 42% risk, that you will fail because you did not get target market feedback before launching than you do of somebody actually stealing your idea. So don't be afraid to go share your idea with people. If you do need a patent pending, that's something that you can file before you get the feedback from your target market for, I think it's like $160. It's not something very expensive to do. And then the other part is just making sure that they're meeting your screening criteria. If somebody is not a target customer, then you don't care about their feedback. And that's actually something very interesting, that those who are not target market customers often have the most to say about your idea, the most criticism and the most feedback for how to fix it, yet they will never buy your product. So if you can identify that, then just rip up their data. You don't want to listen to it. Only listen to those who are in the target market. Now, the last piece is going to be making sure that you have a correct analysis. So the way you clean the data is very important. The way that you analyze that data and then report it. I say that probably half of the insights that founders collect in surveys, they actually leave inside the spreadsheet because they haven't correctly reported that data in a way that's digestible and that they can now show to investors or other teammates, that they can make as a document that is the North Star for their team. And whenever they have a question, they can say, well, let's not just argue about which of us co-founders think is right. Let's go to the data and see what the customer said. So making sure that you're reporting your data in a way that's easy to look up and easy to digest is where you get half your insights. And doing this whole process, you have to do all 4 of these steps right in order to get data that actually is valuable and is repeatable. That can give you a lot of the insights that you would have gotten if you just went ahead and developed your idea and marketed it to get that initial customer feedback. So with that, I'm going to jump into the 2 product market fit tests. Again, the first one is predictive. So this can be done before somebody's tried your product. So you can have an MVP and you can say, okay, let me try with potential customers. You can also do it when you're still idea on a napkin. So even if they aren't going to try it, but before you're capturing their feedback. And so the question that you're asking is something along the lines of, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the wow factor for this product? Where 10 is call to action, 1 is the opposite of call to action. So 10, wow, I want to buy that right now. Wow, I want to download that right now. 1, I wouldn't buy that. I wouldn't ever download that. And it's really interesting, the data we get from this. Now, remember, you can only do this if you have your target market. It can't be anybody who's not in your target market. And you need to make sure that you have explained your product description in a way that is clear and concise. If you've done both of those things, then this score can actually tell you where you're at on your journey to product market fit. So here's a legend right here. If you score a 1 to a 5, you don't have product market fit. When this happens, you're not going to get any virality in your marketing efforts. You don't have something that's really worth pursuing. You need to make huge changes here to the feature set or to the target market in order to increase the score. Maybe one time I've seen somebody actually resurrect an idea from under a 5, but they had to make a lot of very massive changes. Now, most entrepreneurs are actually scoring about a 6.8 when they first start with us. I would say that's the average score. And this is in the land of mediocrity. They're not terrible ideas, but they're just not good enough to warrant any type of virality. So you can still be successful with a 6.8, but what's happening is you are either pushing too broad or the wrong feature set, too broad or the wrong target market for too high probably of a price point. And so you have about a 6.8 product market fit, which means that your sales are going to be much more linear, dollar in, dollar out. And if you have a big marketing budget, then you can be successful. But we're entrepreneurs that have to be scrappy, and we need that word of mouth. We need to get hockey stick growth. The way you do that is you score something that scores over 7.5. And what that shows is that you have a very high potential for predicted product market fit. And that if you were to launch this into your target market, you would get people to buy it, and you wouldn't have to discount, and you would be able to get them to share it and actually spread your product with their friends and family. That's what we all want. But with that, there's an interesting inverse where if you go too high of a product market fit and you go over a 9.0, which is very, very difficult, you'll actually see your target market size diminish. Just to give an example, the highest score that venture validators ever tested was a 9.3, but it was for a woman who had an online dirty dancing instructor class. So as you can imagine, extremely niche market, but she had a cult-like following and had a very, very high product market fit. And so that's where we go back to the three pieces that you can move here. If you're scoring mediocre, well, we can narrow the feature set, or we can give the features that the target customers actually want. We can narrow the target market, or we can lower the price. And those three things we can move as our levers as we're trying to score something over 7.5. Really, realistically, something in the 8.1 to 8.6 range is a really good indicator that you're ready to go build this product. Or if you build the product, you're ready to go market this product. And here are the people who are scoring 8, 9s, and 10s. This is your target market. So what we see from a lot of entrepreneurs that score the 6.8, I'd say the biggest thing is they just have too broad of a target market. They're trying to, maybe in this case, these are a number of women that we've surveyed, and there's those who are moms and those who are not moms. And the average target market is very big, but it's a 6.8. Well, if we look at maybe just the mom segment, we're decreasing the number of people, but we're actually increasing the score to an 8.2. And that's a great product market fit score. They actually know who they're targeting, and that now gives them a lot more focus for launching an MVP. And then maybe over time, they can actually spread out to other target markets. So with that, does anybody have a product that they'd like us to test? Let's see, we've got 2 in the chat here. Okay, we've got a question real quick, and I'll go ahead and answer this. So does the survey for product market fit apply if you already have an MVP? If we have an MVP, is it better to get feedback based on the product usage or survey? Good question. So yes, if you already have an MVP, you will run the same survey. The only distinction is that you're going to be using a different question here. So if you have target customers and you're trying to test with them, you're going to ask them, how disappointed would you be if you could no longer use this product or service? Not disappointed, somewhat disappointed, very disappointed. This is essentially breaking it up into 3 different groups, and they correlate very, very closely. So if you have over 40% of your customers who've used your product say, I'd be very disappointed, that's the same as having a 7.5 to a 10. You're doing really well there, and you have product market fit. It's hard to do though. Most people are landing in the somewhat disappointed. So if that happens to you, what do? Well, you need to go test with new customers and use the wow factor score, those who've never used your product before, and find out what your predicted score is. We've done this with customers, and they'll score maybe an 8.2 with their predicted product market fit score. Customers are essentially saying, I want that. That if you gave me those value propositions, then I would be a customer. Well, now you use this test, this is Sean Ellis test, to find out how disappointed they'd be if they could no longer use your product or service. And if you're falling into somewhat disappointed, that's where the majority of your people are, then there is some disconnect between what you're promising that you're going to deliver and what you're executing on and what you're actually delivering. And so now when you can see, hey, here's what that difference is, it gives you laser focus on what you need to fix. The problem comes though is if you're landing in this 5 to 7.5 group on your predicted product market fit score, then you don't even have enough product market fit to get people, once they've tried your value, to stick with you and to be customers. So that's where you say, okay, I need to actually amp up either the value I'm giving, narrow down the target market, or decrease the price. So these are two tests that work hand in hand that will allow you to identify where do we focus on and who do we focus on. Great question. So does anyone have a product that they would like us to test? If not, then I'll just go through and show you an example of one of our clients that we've tested. Okay, we'll go through and I'll show you an example of a recent client that I've tested. One more thing to show you real quick is it's called a product market fit score. You can look at it saying, hey, here's the total target market. Let me go back to right here. The target market is rating this product as an 8.2. But you can also reverse it and say, let's rate, these are essentially, each of these women is saying that this product for me is a 6.5. This product for me is a 7. And they're rating the product. But you can also turn it around and rate each of those customers and saying, how well is this customer actually fitting my product? And when you do that, you can actually break down the different groups into the hate group, the swing group, and the love group. So a lot of times, entrepreneurs will get people who will rate their product a 4. And if we jump into, well, why are they rating a 4? What we'll do is we'll say, okay, what do you like about the product? They'll say, well, I like this and I like that. We'll say, okay, what do you dislike about the product? Well, they'll say, well, I dislike this and I dislike that. Then we say, okay, what would you change to improve the product? How would you fix those problems that you just mentioned? And they'll give us feedback. Here's the test though to see if that feedback is actually valuable or not. You say, okay, if I were to make those changes, let me pitch to you version 2.0 of the product. Version 2.0 is the same as the first one, except we've changed X, Y, Z. Repeat exactly back what they want. Then say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the wow factor for version 2.0? Where 1 is, I wouldn't buy that, and 10 is, wow, here's my credit card, I want to buy that right now. Their score is very telling on whether or not you should implement their feedback. If they were a 4 and they move up to a 5, that's just a charity point. They're just giving you 1 point to be nice, and because they don't want to have some type of cognitive dissonance between, oh, I said that if you improved all these things, I would give you a higher score. But going from a 4 to a 5, they're never actually going to buy your product. And if anybody is in the hate group, they're between a 1 and a 5. After they've even made the changes that they've suggested, they're dead to you. They're not important. I don't care who you are. You're not my customer. You're never going to buy. And you have all these things that you're trying to push at me to change, but they're just noise. It's distracting. So never, ever, ever listen to the hate group. As soon as you find somebody in the hate group, they're dead to you. What you want to listen to is the swing group. So you're looking for the people who are 5, 6, 7s, and you're trying to find out, okay, what did you like? Did you identify the value with the value proposition that we're pitching? Okay, you did. Now, what do you dislike and what would you change? And you're particularly looking for those people who scored a mediocre score, but said, if you do X, Y, Z, that's an 8, 9, or 10. And once you identify that feedback and you say, okay, we've surveyed 200 people and we've had 80 people tell us that, yeah, right now this is a 6.5, but if you did these things, I'm moving it up to an 8.5. That's really valuable feedback. So that's where you really focus on. Now, I get the question, okay, well, what about the changes the love group wants? Well, if somebody's already giving me an 8, 9, or 10, they're already buying my product, I'm not going to spend too much of my time improving an already great product. What I want to do is spend time on the swing group. So what you do with the love group is you find out, who are these people? What do they have in common with their demographics, with their psychographics? What do they have in common with the value propositions that they like? Once you understand the value propositions that they like, that's your marketing message. Don't listen to the other two groups. Instead, you want to market to the swing group through the eyes of the love group. And understanding that principle can help founders narrow down their marketing message. Instead of blasting 10 different things, they're saying, no, this is what my love group, my ideal customer profile identifies with. Anybody else who can identify with this, this is who I'm going to pitch it to. And that will help you narrow in your marketing message quite a bit. Okay, so we have a question right here. So just because a customer says they want something does not always mean that they'll pay for it. How do we bring realism into customer answers? Great question. So we need to always be careful that we are asking as grounded of hypotheticals as we can. So what do I mean by that? Anytime that you're asking somebody to how they would act in the future, in your head, I want you to say hypothetically. So if I were to ask Carl if he liked this product, in my head, I'm going to say, Carl, do you hypothetically want this product? And Carl's going to say, yeah, I do. But I'm hearing, yes, hypothetically, I do. So we need to make sure that we're testing this in real life. What these surveys allow you to do, though, is narrow in on the MVP features and target market and price point that you should try in real life. Because real life testing is very expensive, takes a lot of money. Remember, we went over it. 4.5 months to go build the wrong MVP. Everyone always builds the wrong MVP. How can we iterate quicker? Well, we can do that with surveys, interviews, and focus groups, but we have to have a very good process. If we have a good process, we can mitigate the difference between what people say they'll do and what they'll actually do. But here's the funny thing. Most people are not getting, they're not having a problem with a false positive. Like I said, the average score is 6.8. It's very difficult to actually pass this test. So what's going to happen is that people are saying, yeah, I don't want your product yet. It's not good enough. Well, it would be very hard-headed and not wise of an entrepreneur to say, well, this is hypothetical data, and I think if I go spend all the time and money and then give it to you, that you'll actually want to put your credit card down and buy it. That's just not going to happen. And if somebody has another question, they might say, well, what about, Steve Jobs or Henry Ford, who say, customers don't know what they want? Well, we need to actually look at the principle there. Henry Ford said, if I asked my customer what they wanted, they would say that I wanted a faster horse. He wanted to give them a car. Well, if you're looking at the entrepreneur and the journey that they should be going on, most entrepreneurs do it wrong, and they start trying to find, they have a solution, they try to find a customer that has that problem, and that's where they go. Good entrepreneurs will say, hey, here's a problem, let me go find a solution. The best entrepreneurs, though, say, here's a problem, what is the value prop missing? What is the value proposition needed to be delivered to the entrepreneur in order to satisfy that problem? And as soon as they identify the value proposition, then they say, okay, a solution is just a vehicle to deliver the value proposition. The solution is not my baby. The value proposition is my baby. So if you're Henry Ford, you'd say, okay, what's the problem here? If people say I want a faster horse, well, what they're saying is that I want to get from point A to point B faster. That's the value proposition that needs to be my North Star. Now looking at what vehicles, no pun intended, could actually deliver that value proposition quicker of point A to point B. Well, there's trains, there's cars, there's maybe a training program where they can run faster. There's so many different ways that you can deliver that value prop. But now what you do is you say, let's go rank and rate each one. So if you were to go to customers and say, hey, I have this machine that can deliver you from point A to point B faster, people can actually conceive, would they use that or would they not? Okay, other question right here. Number of responses from a survey question. So statistical significance is something to keep in mind when you're doing surveys and when you're getting feedback. So for a 95% confidence interval with 5% margin of error, you technically need to be surveying 385 people on a national demographic. But like I said, I'm an adjunct professor. There's a different answer from the academic question, where if we had an unlimited amount of money to go and do a peer-reviewed research report versus the scrappy entrepreneur who has a very small budget. And we have to realize that, yeah, if you go to 385, you can have 95% confidence, but there is a certain number much lower than that where you have diminishing returns for the amount of budget required to get those responses and the amount of insights that you actually get from those responses. So you should never do a survey with less than 35 responses. Technically 50, I mean, from our company's perspective, we don't do a survey that has less than 50 target market responses. And with that, you'll have a 10% margin of error, where you could technically get a 5.5, and it was actually a point higher or lower than that. What we do like to see, though, is customers getting 100 to 200 responses. That's best. But there's different insights that come with different levels. So you can tell if your product is good just based on the number of 8, 9s, and 10s, the number of people in your love group, even if you do as low of a survey as 50. If you're doing price analysis, you're going to want to have over 100 responses. And then if you're trying to get qualitative feedback from multiple market segments, you're going to probably want 100 to 200 responses. The thing is, though, if you have a target market, you don't get more value from more responses past 200. Like the value you get is this big, and the cost you get is literally double. So the goal in academia is let us remove all risk. The goal in entrepreneurship is not to remove all risk, but it is to diminish risk to the point in which we are comfortable and confident with that risk that we go forward. So remembering the purpose of these surveys is to know what MVP to build, who to market it to, and what price to set. Where do we start actually building things? Or if we've actually built things, where do we pivot our marketing criteria to? And so those things can happen much, much cheaper with much smaller numbers. So the answer is 50 to 200. The better your targeting is, the less responses you need to get an accurate readout of that target market. Okay, how often are customers willing to prepay for an MVP before it's built? I would say in my experience, not very often. It probably depends on who that target market is and what that MVP is. I mean, you can technically, look at Kickstarter. Everybody's pre-buying your product, which is great. But if you go Kickstarter, you've got to spend quite a bit of money in marketing. I think they say the average campaign, about 25 to 30% is spent on marketing. So if you go raise $100,000, you have to spend about $30,000 in Facebook ads and the video and the website to actually get that. And you've also gave that $100,000 of sales at a discount. So a lot of times you can be at danger of a net loss when you do that. Is building an MVP and getting customers to pre-sign up for that a sign of validation? Absolutely. And that is always going to be stronger. When we're looking at from a timeline of how valid is information, the weakest information is going to be people saying that they'll do something. Stronger information is if they give you something, such as maybe their contact info, saying, yeah, I want to be on your email list when this actually goes up. Stronger than that, though, is giving money. So parting with, well, between that, you have letter of intent, so people actually writing that, yes, I promise this is something that we're really interested in. But it really starts getting strong when people give you money. So whether it's pre-orders or buying your product. But one step after that, just because somebody buys your product does not mean you have product market fit. One step after that is having repeat purchases. If they're buying again, that means they're really satisfied. And then the ultimate step of you have nailed it, you've arrived, is when you have customer referrals. They're saying that, yeah, I like enough to buy it, I'll buy it again, and I want to share this with friends of mine. So look at everything along that timeline of validation, which puts what we're doing here with hypothetical validation as only having weight if you do all the things I said before, making sure that your survey design is very well, your analyzation structures well, and you're actually pitching your product to the right target market. There's a lot of ways to screw it up, but there's a lot of principles for actually doing it right. And part of being on this today is you get to learn some of those principles and you get access to a course that teaches you those more fully. Okay, let's see. So what can be done to sign up a customer before an MVP is built? So I need a little bit of clarification on that, but probably I'll answer this in the next question. What is the best way to send out surveys? Post on LinkedIn, email? So my course actually goes over a number of ways to do this. It depends where your target market is and who it is. 100% depends. There's probably 8 different ways to do it, and I'll list a couple. A great way is Facebook groups. So Facebook groups has already gathered your target market into all these different pockets. So you can go ahead and post in these Facebook groups. The thing is, you need to make sure that you're giving them some type of value. So you need to offer them some type of compensation, $1 to $5, to take this 2 to 3 minute survey. And if you do that, you also have to post on about 60 Facebook groups. in order to get the responses that you need. Some Facebook groups are a hit, most of them are a miss. Another way is you can use influencers. So if you find maybe an Instagram influencer or somebody on LinkedIn influencer who is a thought leader for your target market, and you think that their followers and audience would have a relevant say on your product, then you can certainly go ahead and pay them to go ahead and post your survey, and you pay your survey participants to go ahead and give you responses. Another way with LinkedIn, if you have a B2B type product, using Sales Navigator and then reaching out to people via a search filter and having them and sending them connection requests. You can use panel providers sometimes. It's very risky because a lot of the data that you get is crap data, crap in, crap out. So those are some of the ways that you can also do Facebook ads. You can buy email lists. It's usually not very effective. You can get an email list usually for a couple $100, but they'll usually flag your email client. So if you use, actually I've been blocked from MailChimp before by doing that. So not a very effective way to do it long-term. So yeah, I think that kind of gives you some insights onto where to go. Okay, so what is the best way using these techniques to determine the price customers are willing to pay? Okay, so Carl, how much time do we have left? We're probably running out right now, huh?
We've got, got about 7 minutes.
Yeah. So let me, real quick. Can you guys see my screen, Carl, with a new page?
Compoundly?
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, I see compoundly.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so this is an example report that we give to our customers. It's an executive summary. So this entrepreneur had an app that exposes the hidden fees in your investment accounts. So you put your 401k in there, maybe your Merrill Lynch account. It would go through, find all of the hidden fees, tell the customer, over the next 5 years, this is going to cost you $13,000. Over the next 10 years, $40,000, and so on. And then it would suggest other products or other vehicles, investment vehicles that are cheaper. So what we're able to do is find out, okay, your product market fit is a 7.5. So you scored enough to warrant building this out. Or if you've already built this out, now let's tell you what the product features are, who the market is, and what price to set. So what we were finding out with the market is that those who did not have a financial advisor and those who had above $70,000 in income were scoring this about a 6.8. But those who had a low income and didn't have a financial advisor were actually scoring this about a 7.9. So he's able to understand, okay, I'm actually going to be starting my marketing off to those people who don't have anywhere else to turn for investment advice. That's why they like compounding. Now, looking at the market value propositions, we've asked all these customers, and the number one thing was market the fact that it saves money from hidden fees. And then the top objection, why would they not use it, was because of security and privacy concerns. And so our full scale report, which we don't have enough time to go over, it's just a 10-page report that jumps into looking at security and privacy concerns. There's 35 different objections here. These are all the things that they're worried about. This is what needs to get fixed. And if you fix this, your score goes up. Now, the last question right here was the price. So how you do it, actually, the full course that I have does teach on pricing, but essentially what you're asking people is, what is the most you'd be willing to pay for this product? I.e., if it was even $1 more, you wouldn't buy it. You're getting everyone's top threshold for the most they're willing to pay. Then you do, if you're in Excel, you would then sort it from greatest to least, and then you would do some multiplication here and some addition. So let's say with Compoundly, one person is willing to pay $50 for it. And let's say that 2 people are willing to pay $40 for it. Well, if I set the price at $50 with this target market, one person would buy it, the revenue from that would be $50. If I set it at $40 though, how many people would buy it? There's the 2 people at 40, but there's also the person at 50 willing to pay a lower price. So bring that down, and now you have 3 people willing to pay $40 from this target market. bring it all the way down to all 144 people are willing to pay 0. And you'll now have a little bit of a curve that you can go ahead and look and say, where does the revenue maximize at? You can also put your cost curve in there and figure out what the profit maximizing price point is. Now, there's a couple of asterisks where this pricing method only works if you have a B2C product. It does not work for B2B because any smart business owner is not going to tell you the most they're willing to pay. And it only works if you have a truly unique product, not a Me Too product, not something that would be have a lot of comparables. So I think that answered all the questions. So I'll turn it back over to Carl.
Great,
oh,
Eric.
actually, before I do, let me put in the chat real quick the link. So
Yeah,
I just put a form link. Yeah, if anyone, you just put your email address in there, and then we'll go ahead and send you our free version of our course. And then also just a quick plug for Venture Validator. We essentially have free resources for those who want to do this themselves, who are bootstrapped. But if you would like us to do it for you, our pricing is really transparent on our website. It's 50, 100, 200 people surveyed from $1,300 on up. And we can turn around results in about 2.5, 3 weeks and help you understand, do you have product market fit, give you a 1-page executive summary, and then a 10-page full report on your target market, and help you spend all of your time building something that they would actually use and pay for.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. Excellent, Eric. Really appreciate you sharing all this information with us. We've got a number of people that are already asking for the presentation. It is being recorded, and we're going to send it out to all the participants so that everybody will have a chance to review the presentation again. And let's see. Yes, we thank you for the link so that we can go get your free course. That's a great idea. Any tips for the startups out there that are any words of encouragement you'd like to offer at this point?
Yeah, my biggest thing is there's 2 types of entrepreneurs. There's the entrepreneur who is listening to this presentation right now saying, Eric's nailing it. Like when I go out and I talk with people, I have so many biases, and I'm getting feedback that I know is what I want to hear. And I'm hearing only the good things. I'm not hearing the bad things. So there's the entrepreneur that's aware that they're full of so many biases. The second type of entrepreneur is just the one who doesn't know they're the first. So if you don't know that you're that first type of entrepreneur, it's just because you haven't had enough experience finding out that we all inherently have biases, and only through really good structure and through following good processes can we overcome our own biases and actually take in the good info as well as the bad, and actually get a balanced idea of, should we spend any more money on this idea?
That's a great point. That's a great point. Just everybody do check the chat again. The first time we sent it out, it appears we sent it just to panelists. So now everybody should be able to see it. So check your chat again. And well, that's fantastic. I think we're wrapping up. We're right on time. And so everybody should have your link at this point. And we appreciate everybody who is interested in Thai Houston and the Thai organization. Please, watch more of our videos and our recordings, follow us on the social media, and come to some of our events as well. So thank you again, Eric. Appreciate you being on with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And that's the end.